Welcome to the second episode in the mini-series about the storytelling within Star Wars The Last Jedi. Today we'll talk about Supreme Leader Snoke. His death was sudden and unexpected, and many people didn't like it, predominantly because we never got to know who he exactly was. That criticism got a lot of flack because, and I paraphrase, Snoke is just like the Emperor and we don't need to know anything about him, because we didn't know anything about the Emperor either. I'll tell you why that is not the case with Snoke. So let's get to it, but before we begin, and I should have done this in the previous video as well, warning, spoilers ahead.
Foolish child, he ignites it and kills his true enemy.
Supreme Leader Snoke, the big evil villain of the new trilogy, or so we thought. Once more, Rian Johnson bamboozles us with subversion of expectations by making our Supreme Leader half the man he used to be. The First Order is the new big antagonistic force to dominate the galaxy, which apparently they've been quite successful in according to the crawl text of The Last Jedi. Starkiller Base was just blown up to pieces, but they are ruling the galaxy because the New Republic is gone. All thanks to the great deeds of Supreme Leader Snoke. Luke went on to create the Jedi Temple where he went to train young Force sensitives, who could one day become Jedi like him. One of them being Ben Solo. Little did Luke know that Ben Solo was being manipulated and began to show signs of his darker side. Eventually Ben Solo grew so much towards the dark side that Luke, for a moment, saw no other solution than to strike his nephew down before he could turn into something bad. This happened all thanks to the great deeds of Supreme Leader Snoke. Ben Solo went on to become Kylo Ren and consequently drove his parents apart. Han Solo went back to his smuggling ways, and Leia became the leader of the Resistance. The three main characters from the original trilogy are left defeated and alone, all thanks to the great deeds of Supreme Leader Snoke. By now you must have picked up on what I'm getting at. Everything, and I mean everything that happens in the new trilogy, is all due to the actions of a mysterious individual called Snoke. He's ugly, probably old as hell, and voiced and motion captured by the amazing Andy Serkis. Yet, not a minute is spent on exploring this character in any way. He is the catalyst, the reason this story even exists, but by not showing us as an audience anything that gives us the slightest information about him, the writer/director tells us to just take him for what he is. This would not have been an issue if this new trilogy had no connections to the previous movies. If Han, Leia, and Luke weren't there, if this was an entirely different era within the Star Wars universe, you wouldn't hear me complain about Snoke. But the fact remains, these movies are direct sequels to the previous 6, and that is where Snoke's lack of backstory and by extension a lack of world building becomes a problem. The status quo left by Return of the Jedi was a universe no longer submitted to the reign of the Galactic Empire. By what the movie, and only the movie, shows us, the destruction of the second Death Star and the death of both the Emperor and Darth Vader brought peace and happiness back into the universe. All is good, sunshine and space rainbows all around. Of course, an empire doesn't fall that easily, so looking beyond what Return of the Jedi shows us, we can safely assume the Rebel Alliance had some cleaning up to do. Regardless, the strongest force was defeated and without leadership. Fast forward 30 years and we have a resistance and a First Order led by Supreme Leader Snoke, a supposedly powerful force user with enough strength to hold a volatile but powerful fighter like Kylo Ren in line. What happened in the meantime? Why is there a republic but not a republic army? Why are the good guys called the Resistance? Who is this Snoke? How come there's another Force user when Sidious and Vader were supposedly the last ones, besides Luke and Leia? Again, Snoke is the catalyst to all that has happened up until the start of The Force Awakens and to his death in The Last Jedi. But we as an audience are completely left in the dark as to who he is, where he came from, and by what means he was able to establish such a powerful force. The expanded material, such as the comics and the novels, do tread this ground more or less, but movies are self-contained stories. Audiences of movies shouldn't be left with questions that can only be answered by additional media. The comics and novels are there to expand, not to fill in the gaps. What it comes down to is the difference between in-universe reasons and out-universe reasons. Let me explain that. In-universe and out-universe reasons are all about the legitimacy of your story. Why does it need to be told? You have to have an answer for both within the story, within the context of your universe, and outside the story. Why do you need to tell the story to other people? The in-universe reason for the new trilogy to be there is Snoke. Because of all that he has done, there is a new conflict in the galaxy and a new story to be told, with him and his followers as the big baddies. Which makes it awfully strange that we don't get the tiniest bit of information about this character. The out-universe reason for this trilogy is... well, that's the thing. The only reason I can think of is money. There is a new trilogy, so Disney can get as much of a return on investment as possible. But the thing is, as far as I can tell, that is the only reason for this new trilogy to exist. As I said in episode 1 about Rey's parents, there was never a story for all 3 movies. Before The Force Awakens hit the theaters, there was only ever The Force Awakens, and Rian Johnson went to work on the story for The Last Jedi shortly after its release. Not too long ago, news came about that there was an outline for the trilogy after all. It came from an interview with Daisy Ridley. However, she specifically said, "Here is what I think I know." So I'm not sure about how legit that is. But the point I'm trying to make is that the 2 out-universe reasons for making a trilogy were 1, money, and 2, familiarity. We as a fanbase know Star Wars movies come in sets of 3, always a trilogy. I highly doubt that someone wrote a story and then everyone decided, oh, we'll need a trilogy to tell it. No, probably the idea for a trilogy came before there was a story. From a business perspective, I get the decisions of making another trilogy. From a storyteller's perspective, I am slightly cynical because in the new trilogy's case, the story is slave to the predetermined length, which are 3 movies, instead of the length being slave to the story. The prequels suffer from this as well. I might make a video about that someday, but I'm digressing quite a bit. So back to Snoke. His presence negate all the achievements made in the original trilogy, and we are given no exploration as to why he is around in the first place. His appearance in The Force Awakens introduced us, as an audience with the character, established intrigue and a desire to know who this mysterious figure is and what he wants. That expectation is subverted in The Last Jedi, but by killing him, Rian Johnson leaves us with nothing. It feels a bit like being guided through a maze only to come upon a dead end and the guide saying, well, this is it, the end of the maze. In fact, it feels a lot like Rey's parents, as I've explained in the previous video. So to conclude, Supreme Leader Snoke, like Rey's parents, is a setup without a satisfying payoff, but added upon that is the lack of world building in relation to the previous movies that established a certain status quo. It is fine to start The Force Awakens where it started, but we need some explanation how the world went from Return of the Jedi to The Force Awakens. The new trilogy defies the status quo that Return of the Jedi established, but gives no explanation as to how that came to be. This is why I think people are dissatisfied with Snoke and with the world building thus far. Thank you again for watching this storytelling bits. Next episode, we'll be taking a look at the entire Canto Bight sequence. Many claim that it ends up in nothing, but I am not entirely sure that is true, so we'll explore that in the next episode. Consider liking this video and subscribing to this channel if you want to see more in the future. That is a wrap for now. Until the next story. Bye bye.